On a stone wall in Hiroshima, there is a shadow. It is not the shadow of a tree, nor of a lamppost. It is the outline of a person, someone who was sitting there on an ordinary morning, and who in a single instant ceased to exist. The stone has held their silhouette for 80 years. This is the story of how an entire city became memory. To tell this story, imagine being a young woman of Hiroshima, the kind who lived there by the thousands, a future survivor. In Japanese, hibakusha, the person struck by the bomb. Through her eyes, the date August 6, 1945 stops being a number and becomes human. Hiroshima lay in southern Japan, at the edge of the sea, cut through by 7 rivers. It was a city of roughly 350,000 people. It had streetcars, schools, temples, markets, and it had a military base, the thing that would later place it on a list of targets. Japan had been at war for years. Tokyo and dozens of other cities had already been bombed and burned. But Hiroshima, strangely, had been spared. The nearly untouched city began to think it was lucky. Today we know it was not luck, it was choice. On the other side of the world, the United States had secretly completed a project that would change history, a weapon made from splitting the atom. A bomb with the power of thousands of tons of explosive in a single object. And the planners wanted a target still intact, to measure exactly what it was capable of doing. That is why Hiroshima had been left out of the ordinary bombing raids. The city that believed itself spared was, in truth, being saved. That was the reason for the clear sky above it. On the night of August 5th into the 6th, air raid sirens sounded, as they had on so many nights. People took shelter, waited, and nothing came. The alarm was switched off. For you, it would be just one more pre-dawn of interrupted sleep, in a war that seemed to have no end. The 6th dawned hot and cloudless. A fine summer day. People went out early, laborers to the factories, children to school, thousands of residents to a communal task in the streets, tearing down wooden houses to open fire breaks. The city was out in the open, exposed. You would be among them, on the way to another ordinary day. Crowded streetcars, the smell of summer, neighbors greeting one another. Nothing that morning warned of what was about to happen. And it is exactly that normalcy that makes what comes next so hard to comprehend. High above, too far to be heard by everyone, a plane was drawing near. An American bomber called the Enola Gay. In its bay, a single bomb, nicknamed Little Boy. Inside it, uranium, the material that, when it splits apart, releases the force that holds the atom together. Hold on to this image, an entire city in motion on a sunlit morning and a lone point in the sky. In a few seconds, the history of the world would divide into a before and an after. And everything that came after begins with a clock that stopped at 8:15. At 8:15 in the morning, the bomb was released. It fell in silence for nearly a minute and detonated about 600 meters above the city, over the center of Hiroshima. It did not touch the ground. It exploded in the air, so that its force would spread across the widest possible area. At the exact point beneath the blast, what came to be called the hypocenter, there appeared, for a fraction of a second, a light brighter than the sun. Those far away described a white flash filling the entire sky. It was the first time in history that a nuclear weapon was used against a city. The bomb released 3 things almost at once: an intense heat, a blinding light, and a wave of pressure. The heat, at the center, was so extreme that it scorched the very stone. The light printed shadows onto walls and pavements, and the shock wave swept through the city like a solid wind. Within a radius of little more than a kilometer, almost everything made by human hands was flattened. Houses, shops, temples, schools. The wave spread out from a single point and opened the city like a fan. In seconds, the center of Hiroshima ceased to exist as a city. It is estimated that some 70,000 people died in that first instant and in the hours that followed. 70,000 lives, each one with a name, a family, plans for that afternoon. The numbers are so vast that they hide the essential thing. Every one of them was a person. That is why we followed just one. You would be far enough from the center to remain alive. You would feel the flash, then the blow, then the strange silence of a city with no sound. When you rose, the world you knew would have changed shape. There were no recognizable streets anymore. There was dust and a sky that darkened in the middle of the morning. Above the city rose an immense cloud, shaped like a mushroom, pushing smoke and debris thousands of meters into the air. It was seen from far away, from other cities, from ships at sea. It was the visible signature of a weapon the world had not yet learned to fear. Soon after, it began to rain. A heavy, dark rain, filthy with the dust the explosion had thrown into the air. It became known as the Black Rain. People, hot and thirsty, lifted their faces to it, not knowing that this water carried something invisible and dangerous: radiation. Because the atomic bomb does not end with the explosion. It leaves behind a trail the eyes cannot see. Radiation reaches the body from within, and its effects can appear days, weeks, sometimes years later. It was this invisible part that made Hiroshima different from any other attack in history. That afternoon, you would do what so many did. You would walk toward the rivers, searching for your own, searching for water, searching for meaning. The city you crossed no longer had a single working clock, yet all of them, later, would be found stopped at the same hour, 8:15. When the dust settled, what remained was a nearly flat plain where a city had once stood. Standing in the middle of it was the skeleton of a building, a former exhibition hall with a metal dome, right near the hypocenter. Because it stood almost directly beneath the blast, the force came from above, and its walls held. Almost everything around it had vanished. It had not. That ruin would earn a name: the Genbaku Dome, the atomic bomb dome. It was neither rebuilt nor torn down. It was left exactly as it stood, on purpose, as a witness. Decades later, it would become a World Heritage Site, recognized by UNESCO. Not to celebrate anything, but so that no one would forget. In those first days, everything was lacking. There was no clean water, no medicine, no doctors. Many hospitals had vanished along with the city. Survivors helped survivors. Neighbors searched for neighbors. You would spend those days between the search for your own and the care of strangers. And then began the cruelest, quietest part. People who had escaped the explosion, seemingly unharmed, began to fall ill. It was the radiation collecting its price, days later, in bodies that had appeared to be saved. That is how the world learned, in the worst possible way, what this weapon truly did. Through the course of 1945, Hiroshima's death toll kept climbing. To the initial 70,000 deaths were added tens of thousands more, from the injuries and from the radiation. By the end of that year, it is estimated that some 140,000 people had died because of the bomb. The count was never simple to close, and perhaps never will be. 3 days after Hiroshima, on August 9, 1945, a second atomic bomb was dropped on another Japanese city, Nagasaki. Tens of thousands more dead. 2 cities, in 3 days, came to know a weapon that had never been used before, and it has never been used in war again since. On August 15th, Japan announced its surrender, bringing the Second World War to an end. To this day, historians debate the weight of the bombs in that decision and whether they were necessary. It is a serious debate, one that deserves respect. But whatever the answer, it does not change the shadow on the stone wall. The facts of the city remain the same. For a survivor, the war ending did not mean that everything was over. The city had to be rebuilt from nothing, and the bodies of those who survived would carry, for years, the invisible mark of that day. Being a hibakusha did not end in August 1945. It began there. There were even those who said that in Hiroshima nothing would grow for decades, that the earth had gone dead, that the city would never be a city again. It was a verdict that seemed reasonable in the face of so much destruction. And it was exactly that verdict which nature, the following year, began to prove wrong. In the spring of 1946, less than a year later, something unexpected appeared above the scorched earth: flowers. Small pink and red flowers sprouting amid the ruins. They were oleanders, a hardy plant, one that asks little and endures much. For a city that had heard itself condemned to barrenness, it was more than botany. It was a sign. Years later, when the residents chose a flower to represent Hiroshima, the choice was almost obvious: the oleander. the flower that dared to bloom first, the plant that said, without words, that life would return. To this day, it is the city's official flower, a symbol of strength and of hope. And it was not only the flowers. Some trees that stood near the hypocenter seemed dead, blackened trunks, no leaves. But in the following season, they budded again from their roots. The Japanese gave them a name of their own, hibakujumoku, the trees that survived the bomb. Dozens of these trees still live in Hiroshima today, some just a few hundred meters from the point of the explosion. Willows, camphor trees, ginkgos, each one has a plaque. Each one is, at the same time, a survivor and a living monument. To watch one of them bud must have been, for many survivors, as if the city itself had decided to breathe again. The rebuilding of Hiroshima was slow and stubborn. Houses rose again, the streetcars ran again, the schools reopened. But the city made a rare decision. Instead of erasing what had happened, it chose to remember. And around the hypocenter there arose not just an ordinary neighborhood, but a place of memory. In the heart of the rebuilt city, the Peace Memorial Park was created. A wide open space, with the Genbaku Dome on one side, a museum, monuments, and a flame that stays lit. A flame that, by Hiroshima's promise, will only be extinguished on the day the last nuclear weapon in the world ceases to exist. Inside the museum in that park is kept a simple and devastating piece, a fragment of a stone step. It is the entrance of a former bank, the Sumitomo, that stood just a few meters from the hypocenter. And on the stone there is a lighter patch surrounding a dark silhouette. It is the shadow of a person. The explanation is as physical as it is moving. Someone was sitting on that step, perhaps waiting for the bank to open, on that morning of August 6th. The heat of the bomb bleached the stone around them, but where the body blocked that light, the stone stayed as it was. The outline that remains is, literally, the place that person occupied in the world. We do not know who it was. We do not know the name, the age, the story. We know only that they existed, that they were there, and that in a fraction of a second they became absence. The shadow on the stone is not morbid. It is the opposite. It is proof that someone was there. It is humanity reduced to its simplest trace. I was here. It is for this shadow that the world should pause a moment, because it turns a number impossible to imagine, 70,000, 140,000, into a single person sitting on a step on a summer morning. And perhaps that is the only way to truly comprehend Hiroshima, one life at a time. Among the survivors of that day were many children. One of them was named Sadako Sasaki. On the day of the bomb, she was only 2 years old. She was at home, far enough from the center to survive the explosion. She grew into a girl full of energy, quick, who loved to run. For years, it seemed she had escaped. But radiation is patient. When Sadako was around 11, years after she had already forgotten the bomb, she fell ill. It was leukemia, a cancer of the blood, linked to radiation exposure. In Hiroshima, the disease became so common among the survivors that it earned a sorrowful name, the atomic bomb disease. In the hospital, Sadako learned an old Japanese legend. Tradition holds that whoever folds 1,000 cranes, 1,000 paper cranes, in origami, is granted a wish. The crane, in Japan, is a symbol of long life and of healing. And Sadako, from her hospital bed, began to fold. She folded with whatever she had, medicine wrappers, gift papers, any scrap she could find. Crane after crane, with fingers growing ever weaker. They say her wish was at once simple and enormous, to live, and, more than that, a world in which no other child would have to endure what she was enduring. Sadako died still a girl, in 1955, 10 years after the bomb that had struck her at the age of 2. But the story of her cranes did not die with her. Her schoolmates, deeply moved, decided that this girl and all the children killed by the bomb would not be forgotten. And they turned the grief into something constructive. In 1958, they raised, in the Peace Memorial Park, the Children's Peace Monument. At the top, the statue of a girl holding a great paper crane open to the sky. It is not only Sadako. It is all the children of Hiroshima. It is the childhood that day cut short. Ever since, something beautiful happens all year long. Children from all over the planet fold cranes and send them to Hiroshima. Millions of them arrive each year in colorful strings and are laid around the monument. A small gesture, repeated by millions of hands, has become a continuous river of paper. Think about what that gesture means. A sick girl folded cranes asking to live. She did not make it, but her wish for a world without that was taken up by people who never knew her, in countries she would never see. The paper crane became, across the whole world, the symbol of peace and against nuclear weapons. For our survivor, who lived long enough to see all of this, perhaps that was the meaning of having survived. Not to forget, but to tell. The hibakusha who grew old spent decades doing exactly that, giving their testimony in schools, at gatherings, before anyone willing to listen. They would repeat, with a calm that cost them dearly, the details of that morning. Not from any wish to relive the pain, but because they knew one simple thing. As long as someone was alive to tell it, it would be harder for the world to pretend that it had not happened. Their memory became a shield for the future. With time, the survivors grew older. Today few remain, and fewer with each passing year. There comes a moment, already drawing near, when there will be no one left alive who saw that flash with their own eyes. And the great question of Hiroshima becomes, who will remember when there are no more witnesses? The city's answer was to keep everything. The step with the shadow. The clock stopped at 8:15. The clothes, the tricycles, the everyday objects that survived. Each one is a piece of an interrupted life. Together, they do what no statistic can. They give the victims back their faces. Hiroshima could have chosen forgetting. It could have erased the dome, paved over the hypocenter, turned the page. It would have been understandable. Instead, it did the opposite. It turned the worst day of its history into the center of its identity. Not as a victim city, but as a message city. And the message is a single one, repeated on every monument, on every plaque, on every paper crane. Never again. Not as accusation, not as revenge. As a plea that no other city in the world should ever have to discover, in its own flesh, what Hiroshima discovered on a morning in August. Because what happened there was not the work of chance, nor of a force of nature. It was a human decision, carried out by human beings, upon other human beings. That is what makes the lesson so hard and so necessary. What humanity did once, humanity can choose never to do again. The weapons that exist in the world today are far more powerful than that one. The Hiroshima bomb, for all its destruction, is small beside today's arsenals. That is why the shadow on the stone is not only a memory of the past. It is a warning about the present, about what is still, at this very moment, kept in silos around the world. But Hiroshima is not a story only of grief. It is also a story of return. The city they said was dead forever is today a living metropolis of more than 1 million people. Streetcars run again. Children go to school again. The rivers reflect the sky again. Over the rebuilt city, the oleanders keep blooming every year, red and pink, as they bloomed in 1946. The surviving trees keep putting out leaves, and the Genbaku Dome still stands, purposely in ruins among new buildings, the past that refuses to be erased so that the future will remember. There is, in the park, a cenotaph, a stone arch beneath which are kept the names of all the known victims of the bomb, a list that still grows each year as more survivors pass on. Its inscription blames no one in particular. It says, in essence, rest in peace, for the mistake shall not be repeated. Notice the choice of those words. Not their mistake, not our mistake, only the mistake, taken on by all of humanity, as a collective promise. It is perhaps the most generous sentence ever written by a wounded city, and it is the heart of everything Hiroshima tries to say to the world. Let us return to our survivor, now elderly, walking through the park that grew over the ruins of her youth. She saw the city die and be reborn. She watched her children and grandchildren grow up in a Hiroshima of peace. And she carried, her whole life, the memory of a morning that lasted a second and never once left her. People like her are the reason this story is still told in the first person, not as a fact from a book, but as lived experience. Every testimony they left is a bridge between those who were there and those born decades later, on the other side of the world, watching this now. Every August 6th, at 8:15 in the morning, Hiroshima stops. A bell rings. People fall silent. For an instant, the entire city goes quiet at the exact hour when everything changed. It is not only a silence of sorrow, it is a silence of promise. And at night, on that same day, something of a simple beauty happens. Thousands of paper lanterns are lit and set adrift on the rivers of Hiroshima. Each lantern carries a name or a message and floats downstream carrying light. The same rivers so many people ran to that morning, now carrying light instead of flight. The lanterns drift toward the sea by the light of the peace flame that stays lit in the park. And there is in this a symmetry that both wounds and heals. The water that was refuge on the worst day now carries the memory of those who were lost every year with care and with beauty. This is the Hiroshima of today, a city that chose not to hide its wound, but to turn it into a beacon that keeps a shadow on a stone, not to shock, but to remind, that teaches with a flower and with a paper crane that life insists even where they said nothing would grow. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be the shadow on the stone. That person has no name for us, but they had a name for someone. They had plans for that afternoon, and they represent, alone, every one of the lives that day cut short. To remember them is to remember them all. Hiroshima does not ask for pity. It asks for memory. It asks that we look at that morning of clear skies and understand what is at stake when these weapons exist. The city did its part. It survived, rebuilt, and told the story. Remembering is the part that falls to us. In the end, the greatest lesson of Hiroshima may be the simplest. Behind every number there is a person. Behind every war, ordinary lives on an ordinary morning. And peace is not some distant detail of politics. It is the difference between a city full of people and a shadow on a wall. If this story moved you, leave a simple gesture in the comments. The word peace, or the name of a city you love. Do it for the person on that step who could not leave their own name behind. Sometimes remembering together is already a form of care. And if you believe that true stories deserve to be told with care and with respect, great, real, and impossible to forget, subscribe to World and Stories. Because there are stories we tell not to entertain, but so that they will not be lost. In Hiroshima, the flame still burns, waiting for the day when it can finally go out. The lanterns keep drifting down the rivers, and the shadow on the stone is still there, patient, reminding the world of one single thing: never again. Until the next story.